Today we're in Boston at Harvard Bookstore. We're here to interview author Daniel Pink, who's the author of The Whole New Mind and his book that he's launching tonight, Drive. What motivates us may not be exactly what we think. We're in Boston at Harvard Bookstore at Daniel Pink's book launch of his new book, Drive. Daniel, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
It's a pleasure, Tara.
So the first thing I want to know is what actually motivated you to write this book?
Well, I guess the main motivation was I wrote an earlier book called A Whole New Mind, which is right here. And that laid out the case for a move away from left brain abilities being predominant to more right brain abilities. And in the course of that, people wanted to know, well, how do we motivate people to do these more creative tasks? And I didn't have a clue, so I went to the research, and it turns out there's a really great treasure trove of research about human motivation that offers some surprising findings about what really motivates us. And I found it so endlessly interesting, and I thought that what a lot of these scientists in this kind of disaggregated way had discovered was really important. I thought it'd be a fun, cool book to write that some people might find useful.
So you're not saying that we can motivate people just by paying them more these days?
You can. You can motivate. Yeah. I mean, you can motivate people with money. There's no question about it. Now the question is, what are you motivating them to do?
Yeah.
And what the research shows is that money is a very important motivator. First of all, if people aren't being paid enough, if they're being paid unfairly, if they feel like they're not being treated well, you're not going to have any motivation. But this idea that the way to get people to perform at a higher level is just simply to pay them more, or offer them even worse, if-then incentives. If you, Tara, you do this, then you'll get that.
Yeah.
That works for a lot of things, but it doesn't work very well.
And what type of things does it work for?
It works for things that are simple.
Yeah.
That are rule-based, where you just say, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, get the right answer, or I'm going to follow a simple set of rules. It's great for that. You want people to do something in the short term? Really good for that. You want people to do things that endure? Doesn't work that well. You want people to do things that are creative, conceptual, innovative? Doesn't work that well.
So performance, how do we get people to perform as well as paying them well?
Well, I really do think that one part of performance is actually paying people well.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting research by some economists who found this peculiar thing in Silicon Valley here in the U.S., where they looked at the wages that certain people were getting for certain kinds of work. And a lot of times in a local area, the range for wages for a particular type of job isn't that vast. Like if you're an auditor with 3 years of experience working at this kind of company in Sydney, the pay range isn't going to be vast. Okay.
Yeah.
And what they found is that there were some companies that were paying people like outside of that range, on the high side. What the heck's going on? It doesn't make any sense. They're paying more than the market should suggest. And it turned out that those companies also were very high-performing companies. And the reason we can surmise from that is that they're basically, I don't necessarily explicitly, but what they were doing is they were basically saying, we're going to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table.
Yeah. Pay
people enough so that money isn't, it's not thinking about money, it's thinking about doing good work.
And what about people who are already performing quite well? How do we get them to... Are they just motivated by things like by money and external things, or are they?
No, I mean, people who are already doing great work. I think one of the frustrations of people who are already doing great work is a lot of them want a new challenge. And so I think that there's a tendency in some organizations of any kind that if someone is doing something really well, is you keep having them do that same thing over and over again. And that makes some sense, but especially among the most talented, kind of internally motivated people, they're seeking some kind of new challenge all the time. And there's some interesting research from right here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, from a professor at the Harvard Business School, writing in Harvard Business Review, that showed that the main motivator for workers was, her words, making progress.
Wow.
Making progress.
And so is that meaning that they need new things to do all the time, or that we need a bigger project if they're doing small tasks?
Depends on the person.
Do they make
Depends on the person. I mean, I think that's the task of That's a task of management. I mean, one of the things about, one of the fallacies of this kind of mechanistic carrot and stick approach to motivation is that, everybody's motivated by the same things in the same way. So that to get somebody to do this task, it requires 4 carrots.
Yeah.
To get somebody to do that one, that's a 7 carrot task. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Some people want new challenges. Some people want to do current challenges in a new way. It really depends. And so, we sort of have this mythology about management or about people in organizations. I think it's fading a little bit, that other human beings are kind of endlessly manipulable, and they're like little machines, and you just sort of press the right lever and they'll do exactly what you want them to do. And it's just, okay, this guy needs a different, and it doesn't work that way. It's much more inscrutable, much more complicated, much more fast changing, much more requiring human skills that computers and that can't do very well.
So you're saying that we need to talk to our staff more on a one-on-one basis, or?
I think that that most managers of any kind would do so much better with less talking and more listening. I don't think there's a deficit of managers talking. I think there's a deficit of managers listening.
And what if we're in a big organisation, if we're managing just a small department within a big organisation, and we don't have much control about reward and punishment? How can we motivate our staff in those situations?
Well, I think that, again, it's sort of get past it. I mean, one of the people I write about in this book, Drive, is a fellow named Edward Deasy, who's at the University of Rochester, and he says, we got to get past this idea that motivation is something that one person does to another person.
Yeah.
It's really something that one person does for him or herself. And so I think that's actually a very important first step. And then if you look at sort of some of the common threads of what motivates people in a more enduring, intrinsic way, it's greater autonomy, self-direction, chance to get better at stuff, the chance to make progress, the chance to do something purposeful.
And can you just describe autonomy for me?
Yeah, autonomy is just our urge to be self-directed. And so in the workplace, it's autonomy over, some amount of autonomy over time. Sometimes that's sometimes difficult in certain healthcare settings.
Yep.
Autonomy over task, over technique, over team, and that ends up. And not all of those are possible in every kind of setting, in every kind of way. I think in some healthcare settings, actually, autonomy over technique is good to a point. That there have to be protocols that we have to kind of know what works. You don't want people endlessly experiment. You want some experimentation.
Yes.
But if something is really working and it's a matter of life and death, you don't experiment. You do what you're supposed to. So those kinds of things make sense. On the other hand, you need sort of a lot of innovation and experimentation to figure out other things that.
And how do we promote that innovation?
I think that the way we typically used to think about it, or perhaps even still think about it today, is you offer people an if-then reward. Hey, if you're innovative, then you get this.
Yeah.
And that's not a very good idea. I think you're better off giving people giving people greater autonomy, putting them in situations where they're using their strengths and doing stuff that's challenging and interesting. There's some examples of companies doing things in really cool, interesting ways. One company, an Australian company, I call it Atlassian, started by 2 really interesting straight out of universities. 2 Australian guys started this company, and they do these things called FedEx days, where people have one day where they can work on whatever they want, and then 24 hours later they show the results to the rest of the company. This kind of fun meeting. And that's produced this whole array of innovations. And that's not a carrot, that's not an if-then incentive. It's saying, you want to do good work, you want to do something creative, hey, go forth and do it, rock and roll.
And what about on the other end of the scale? So we've looked at big organisations. What about people who are working with and by themselves, for themselves? How can those people motivate themselves, do you think?
I think that in many cases, the act of making that choice about your work life suggests a certain level of self-motivation already, because you're deviating from the norm, and you don't have a manager, you don't have someone saying, what time did you come in today? So I think that a lot of those folks already have that base level of it, and in fact that urge for autonomy is what led them to it. So I think what I find and I've written about self-employed people before, is that the bigger problem among people working like that is not that they don't show up to work, is that they never leave.
Okay.
If you talk to people who are self-employed, they generally say, well, I'm always on. It's like, when I worked in an office, like, the building shut down. No one was there. If I didn't answer my phone, it was okay. And now, you know, it's me.
We're overworking.
Yeah.
So the other thing is just about your other book, A Whole New Mind. That was a big hit and still is a big hit. What is that about? What does that tell us about?
Well, that book makes the argument that for a whole host of forces, the rise of outsourcing of routine white-collar work to low-cost providers, especially in Asia, because of the automation of certain kinds of white-collar work, that routine algorithmic left-brain work is no longer as valuable as it was. And that's a lot of work that white-collar workers were trained for.
Yeah.
That routine algorithmic white-collar work isn't as valuable. Those routine algorithmic white-collar abilities or skills aren't as valuable because you can send them overseas or you can reduce them to lines of code and software. And as a result, there's kind of a shift in favor of more of these big picture, artistic, empathic, right brain abilities. Things like design and design thinking, to some extent story. What's really important is what I call symphony, that is big picture thinking. And I keep hearing, it's kind of interesting, I think it's true in health and in other fields as well. On this point about symphony, symphonic, big picture thinking, is I keep hearing employers say, we want people who are T-shaped.
Yeah.
You heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right? We want people who, I mean, I hear it, it's like it's the letter of the decade. This is going to be the T decade, right? We want people who are T-shaped. You got to have some depth.
Yeah.
You got to know something. But if you have only that, you're not that valuable. You got to have this. You got to have some breadth and be able to connect that specialty to different functions, different industries, different organizations, different cultures, different languages sometimes, and that's in the future increasingly belongs to T-shaped people.
So in your book, back to Drive. In your book Drive, you've focused on what science knows, bringing that into business. So one philosophy that you've got is that you can bring outside information into our industry. Is that what you're saying from that comment?
What do you mean?
So can we bring, by getting knowledge from other industries, is that going to be helpful for us?
Oh, sure,
absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that, that has nothing to do with anything I've written. I just think that's plain common sense, and you see some really interesting examples of this. You see it from, I'll give you a good example, a recent example, the mayor of New York. The mayor of New York just got his unprecedented third term. You have four-year mayoral terms, and I'm not a New Yorker, but New York has 4-year mayoral terms, and he ended up getting a third term, which is unprecedented. They actually had to change the law. And he did. They actually had to change the law. 2 terms was the limit, and then they changed the law so he could run for a third term. Very controversial. Anyway, what he has done in New York, which again, I think most managers should be doing it, is that he said to the various, New York is a huge city. I mean, New York City has probably, it's
same as Australia.
No, well, probably half.
Pretty
Australia
close,
is what, 20 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, New York City probably is 10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like half, this one city is half the population of Australia. And so, so the various agencies, the agency in charge of parks, the agency in charge of garbage pickup, the agency in charge of this. And what he said is he asked the heads of the agencies to spend 3 weeks working at another agency to see how they did it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that is great.
And now what would be interesting is let's do some other kind of cross-pollination. Let's have the head of the Parks Department for the City of New York go work at the Parks Department of the City of Sydney.
Yeah.
Let's have the head of the Department of Education for the U.S. state of Minnesota go work for the Department of Education of New South Wales.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting.
It would be great.
Yeah, just see how other, and I think, it's a difficult thing to do and it's expensive, but I think that kind of cross-pollination is gets people's juices going, gets some ideas out there, sort of breaks the day-to-day.
Daniel, thank you so much for speaking to us.
My
Your
pleasure.
insights have been fabulous.
Thanks a lot.
We've just been speaking with Daniel Pink. Daniel, thank you so much for speaking with us. Your insights will help us be better managers.
It's a pleasure, Tara.